Springett, the chairman of the Maidstone Joint Transportation Board, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this virtual meeting of the board. First one this year.
Woohoo!
I know, don't go there. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the council's YouTube channel, and this will include the instant messaging. Will anybody else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. Thank you. My role as chairman will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has been temporarily assigned to the Democratic Services Officer, Miss Parfitt. This officer will not steer the debate, but will merely assist in the running of the remote meeting, producing the minutes and providing procedural advice as required. Members are reminded that instant messaging will be visible to those viewing the meeting and must only be used by members to indicate their wish to speak. If you do wish to speak, can you just type speak in the message bar, and hopefully I will try and keep a tab on who wishes to speak in what order. I will now ask the clerk to take the attendance register by reading out the list of committee members who will confirm their attendance by answering present.
Apologies there. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Councillor Brown? I'll come back. Councillor Burton?
Present.
Councillor Cannon? I'll come back. Councillor Carter? I'll come back. Councillor Chittenden?
Present.
Councillor Clark?
Present.
Councillor Cook?
Present.
Councillor Cooper? I'll come back. Councillor Cox?
Present.
Councillor Cumming?
Present.
Councillor Daly? Councillor Fort?
Present.
Councillor Hinder?
Present.
Councillor Cadcar?
Present.
Councillor Parfitt-Reid? Councillor Prendergast?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sams?
Present.
Councillor Springett?
Present.
Councillor Webb? I'll come back. And Councillor Wilson?
Present.
Thank you. I'll just go over those members that weren't present when I did the first roll call. Councillor Brown? Councillor Cannon? Councillor Carter? Councillor Cooper? Councillor Daly? Councillor Parfitt-Reid? And Councillor Webb. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Olivia. I'll now ask the clerk to read out the list of officers present and the items which they are presenting.
Thank you. So with us this evening from Maidstone Borough Council, we have the Interim Local Plan Review Director, Philip Coyne, the Head of Planning and Development, Rob Jarman, and from Kent County Council, we have the Principal Transport and Development Planner, Brendan Wright, the District Manager, Susan Laporte, Schemes Project Manager, Jenny Watson for item 14, Schemes Project Manager, Gary Peake for item 14, the Principal Transport Planner, Mark Welch for item 13, the Major Capital Programme Manager, Lee Birchill for items 12 and 15, Senior Project Manager, Major Capital Programme Team, Barry Stiff for item 16, Project Manager, Major Capital Programme Team, Alex Beach, and the Local Growth Fund Programme Manager, Chris Seamark, and myself, Olivia Parfitt, as clerk from Maidstone Borough Council.
Thank you, Olivia. This is a slightly unusual meeting because it is an informal meeting. So Olivia is going to explain the slight differences with this meeting. If I can ask Olivia to do that, thank you.
Of course, thank you, Chairman. So, members, you'll be aware that Democratic Services have experienced difficulties in securing an alternative venue to hold meetings of the board, as the Council's Town Hall was not suitable due to the board's large membership size. In holding a virtual informal meeting where the board's members are not physically together, any resolutions agreed by the board will not hold any formal weight. However, the minutes of the meeting will still be produced to reflect the debate and any recommendations made. As this meeting is informal, attendance will not count towards the 6-month attendance rule, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Olivia. So going back to the agenda, item 1, apologies. We've had no apologies for absence. Item 2,
Madam Chairman, may I present apologies for Dan Daly? He rang me up this afternoon.
that's
Said he
fine.
wasn't going to be. My apologies for jumping in like that as
That's
well.
okay. That's fine, Councillor Chittenden. That's noted. Thank you very much. Are there any is anybody substituting for Councillor Daly?
No, there's only me.
Over
No,
you.
thanks.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So there's no other substitute members that I'm aware of. Item 3, urgent items. There is an urgent item and an urgent update for this evening's meeting, and both contribute towards this evening's discussion. They weren't available at the time of publication. These items are the MITP report, Integrated Transport Package Report, published on Thursday the 6th of January this year as part of the amended agenda, which you should all have received, and an urgent update to item 14, which is the Hart Street Barker Road Options Report, which it's in the form of 2 appendices, which were published online on Tuesday, the 11th of January. They basically were the options plans that were published. Item 4, visiting members. A notification has been received from the following councillors. For item 9, which is a presentation of petitions, I have councillors Coates, Harper, Rose and English. For item 13, which is the update on the Kent Rail Strategy 2021 to 2026, I have councillor Harper. Item 14, which is the Hart Street Barker Road Options Report, I have councillors Harper, Nagy and English. And for item 16, the Maidstone Integrated Transport Package, I have councillor Harper. Are there any other visiting members this evening? And if so, can you please state your name and what item you wish to speak on, please?
Chair, may I think you've mentioned my name, Councillor Rose. May I mention speak on item 14 and reserve my right on items 9 and 16, please? Okay,
I've got you down for 14. I've got you down for 9 anyway. Put you down, and I will do my very best to remember to bring you all in, but I can't guarantee you to be terribly efficient this evening. Thank you. Are there any disclosures by members and
sorry,
officers?
Val.
Oh yes,
Val. It's Councillor Parfitt-Reid here. I'm a visiting member. I don't wish to speak on any items. I'm just here for information.
Super. Okay, thank you, Lottie. Thanks for letting me know.
Lottie,
You can't be a visiting member.
you're a county councillor. You're not a visiting member. You're a member of the board. All the county councillors representing Maidstone divisions are full members of the board. So
Wow.
You're here as of right. Val,
Thank you for clarifying that.
Val, could I just point out that we also have the cabinet member for transport from KCC in attendance, and you might want to just welcome him as well.
Ooh.
Okay, that's understood, and I understand that's Councillor Brazier. Thank you very much. That's understood. Welcome to the meeting.
And Val,
yes, Councillor Spooner.
Madam Chairman, I am here as a visiting member. There is no particular item that I wish to speak on. I just wish to listen. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's understood, Councillor Spooner. So thank you very much. So going back to item 5 again, are there any disclosures by members and officers? No, none. Thank you. Disclosures of lobbying?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I have received some lobbying on the where are we? Item 14, Hart Street Barker Road.
Okay, I think the clerk will
would
run through now and just check to see if anybody has been lobbied. So I'll pass over to Olivia. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Burton.
Yes, item 14.
I note that Councillor Cannon has now joined us. Councillor Cannon, are you in attendance?
Yes, hello. Hi. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. I can, thank you. Have you been lobbied at all?
Yes, on Hart Street and Baker Road.
Thank you. Councillor Chittenden?
No lobbying at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
14.
Thank you. And Councillor Cook, you had already stated item 14.
Yes, thank you, Olivia. Nothing else, just that one.
Thank you. Councillor Cox.
14.
Councillor Cumming.
No lobbying on these items.
Thank you. Councillor Fort.
No lobbying.
Councillor Hinder.
No lobbying.
Councillor Khadkar.
No lobbying.
Thank you. Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
I have been lobbied on item 14.
Thank you. Councillor Prendergast.
No, I haven't been lobbied. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor Sams.
Item 14.
Thank you. Councillor Springett.
Item 14.
Thank you. And I note that Councillor Webb has also joined the meeting. Councillor Webb, have you been lobbied?
Yes, I have on 14.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson.
No lobbying.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. There are no Part 2 papers and I intend to take all items in public. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, members. Now, just to complicate matters, as we've waited so long for this meeting and we've waited so long for the integrated transport package, the relevant officer for item 16, which is the Maidstone integrated transport package, has to leave the meeting early. So it is my intention to take this item next to give us the best possible opportunity to discuss this item as best we can. I therefore propose this item is the next item ahead of all other items, if this is agreeable to boards, members and members of the public. So if anyone does not agree to take item 16 next, can you please speak now? Thank you very much. I would then propose after item 16, I would then take item 12 and which is the A229 and the 249 links between the M2 and the M20 verbal update, and item 15, the A229 Bluebell Hill improvement scheme, to be taken together because they have overlapping subject matter. After that, the agenda order. So the agenda order from now will be item 16, the MITP, then items 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 15 together, and then 13, 14 and 17. I know that's a little bit complicated, but it's the only way we can actually juggle to try and cover everything that we wish to cover. So can I ask members, is this agreed?
Agreed.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So with haste, I will then move straight on to item 16, which is the Maidstone Integrated Transport Package, and the report will be introduced by Barry Stiff. So Barry, if you're there, if you would like to introduce the report, please.
Yep. Thanks, Chair. Appreciate everyone for accommodating my timing constraints tonight.
Thank you.
I will probably turn my camera off because I'm actually mobile at the moment, so I'm not too sure on the actual reliability of the connection. So it's okay. I'll turn my camera off.
That's fine by me. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. So what I plan to do is just quickly talk through the proposed programme of works, and then probably take any questions. I think it is, it's a topic that's probably well known by the board. So starting with the first scheme, which is the A249 Bearsted Road. The current situation is we have two outstanding planning applications that relate to, there's a drainage outfall into the Maidstone crematorium, and there's a outstanding plan application for the completion of the internal access road that runs through Newton Court shopping village and connects to the HGV turnaround area located north of Gymfinity at the top of the site. both applications are submitted and are planned to go to their respective committees in February, with the outfall to the crematorium going to Maidstone Planning Committee and the continuation of the access road within Newman Shopping Village going to KCC's Planning Committee. We're hopeful of a successful resolution to those applications, and subject to their approval, we have a contractor that's waiting to be appointed for the project. We've completed the procurement process, and the programme, subject to the confirmation of the planning, is to commence the construction works in April. We've got some vegetation clearance to carry out in February to avoid the nesting bird season, and then the expectation is we'll be on site in April, completing around about spring 2023. So we're looking about a year's construction. Not all of it's going to be online, so it's quite a bit of the work is offline, so it's not necessarily going to impact on the highway network for that whole period of time. So I'll move on to next. I don't know how you want to deal with this, Councillor Springett. Do you want to take questions as we go through, or at the end?
May I raise a question, Chair?
Yes, Councillor Hinder, go ahead.
It may seem small, but part 2.1.3 mentions that following comments from the local ward councillors, the planning application was deferred. May I point out that none of the 3 ward members of Boxley were involved in this whatsoever. So I would like this corrected, please. It was not a local member that caused this item to be deferred.
Understood, Councillor Hinder. Yes, I'm aware of that, but thank you for that clarification. I think it would be easier if we let Barry present the report, and then I'll do questions at the end if members are happy with that. I think that might be a little bit easier and keep us neater to time. So Barry, if you'd like to carry on, and then we'll do the questions at the end.
Yeah, apologies for the mistake in the boundaries of the ward members. Okay, so moving on to the next item, it's the Cold Harbour Junction on the A20. Because of the interaction with the M20 and the Bearsted Road Junction and the interaction that has with the M20, we're not able to construct those 2 projects at the same time where they have a direct impact on the M20. So with that project, all the design is complete, and we're starting the procurement process in February this year, with a view to having a contractor on board during the summer, and subject to the programme coming forward for Bearsted Road. There is some offline works on the Cold Harbour Junction where we can overlap the 2 projects to start that one, probably looking at the autumn, winter of this year. That there's about 3 months worth of work for the offline works that we can overlap. So the plan is to start the end of this year, whilst Bearsted Road is finishing off as well. And by the time Bearsted Road is finished, we will then be able to commence the online works at Cold Harbour. There's not much really else to add on that project. It's proceeding to plan. The next project is Hall Road. It's outside of Maidstone, but it's following the similar programme line to Cold Harbour, and because of the connectivity of the highway network, it's something that can't be carried out at the same time. We've got to then complete that project at the completion of Cold Harbour. So we're looking at commencing that in the autumn of 2023 once Cold Harbour is complete, subject again to the completion of Cold Harbour and the knock-on effect of the Bearsted Road to the programme. Moving on to the Lewes Road section of the project, the wheat sheaf. There's obviously, everyone's aware there's been substantial delays in bringing this work forward. To try and mitigate some of those ongoing delays, we are proposing to split it into 2 phases. Phase 1 being an experimental TRO for the closure of Cranbourne Avenue. We're hoping to have that in place during February. The benefit of an experimental TRO is that that can run for, it has to run for a minimum 6 months and for a maximum of 18 months. But at the end of 6 months, provided we close out any objections or comments, the order is able to be made permanent at that point. There's also other benefits to the wider project. By bringing this work forward, it will enable us during the period of the trial closure to monitor traffic flows and to use that data to then inform a review of the design. Not that we're changing it, but it will enable the live data that's collected rather than the assumed modelling data that goes into the design at the stage. So again, that's another positive that we can bring forward. Currently, it's not proposed to demolish the pub prior to being on site. The current plan is we believe this is efficiency in cost by demolishing it at the same time as the main scheme is delivered, primarily with the traffic management impacts and the cost of mobilising contractors. The plan is to then bring forward the phase 2 of the full implementation of the scheme in spring 2023. Again, these are all subject to competing road space, and there are a number of SGN works planned for Maidstone over the coming months, and also coordinating the project with other Maidstone schemes. The next element is Armstrong Road and Shields Crescent. I'll deal with those together because we plan to deliver those together. The Armstrong Road is a relatively small improvement, and we're hoping to use our term maintenance contractor to do the works because it's a smaller scale than the other projects, and the procurement process is much shorter. And subject to confirming road space with our streetworks team, we would like to bring that forward over this coming summer to try and maximise the school holiday times and reduction of impact on traffic in and around Maidstone. Potentially that will take longer than the 6-week school holiday period, but we just want to maximise that period. It potentially will run in beyond the end of August. As I said, that will also incorporate the small improvement at Shields Crescent, because those improvements sort of go hand in hand. The next item is Cripple Street, Bolton Lane. That project is currently paused, although we are looking at, primarily because of the feedback from the consultation and the impact on the loss of the landscaped area outside the shops. So we're currently looking at a couple of minor a reduction in the scheme scope, looking at how we can improve traffic flow. It's not going to deliver any significant benefits in terms of capacity because that site is just heavily constrained. But the two options we're looking at is to look at half bus laybys, which will enable cars to pass stationary buses, and also looking at how we can improve the right turn queues into Cripple Street by widening on that southbound approach. So they're currently going through a bit more design work, and we need to engage with utilities to understand the cost implications against the benefits it's going to deliver. The next item is the A20 at Wellington Street. This is the design is progressing. The listed building consent was taken to Maidstone's November committee, and unfortunately was, I think, got a deferral from that meeting, so it needs to be resubmitted. There's some comments that KCC need to address, and it's likely that's going to be taken forward to the committee in February with those comments addressed. And in terms of delivery, we're looking at April 2023 as a start date. again, dependent on other projects. So a lot of these dates I'm quoting are target dates based on where we know the schemes are and possible conflicts with other works. But these things will be subject to change. The next item is the A274 Winnington Street. That item is currently paused. We're not proceeding on that at the moment. There's that we need to prioritise resources and workload to concentrate on the other MITP schemes. And the final item is the A26 Tunbridge Road, Fountain Lane. Currently, there's a feasibility design progress for that. There's no funding currently in place. It is being funded by Section 106 contributions. And currently, there's no work being carried out to progress that, primarily due to the lack of funding that we have on that project at the moment. So I think Councillor Springer, that probably concludes a brief update on the project. So welcome to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Barry. I mean, I think what I would like to say is it is actually so nice to see that something is about to start. I don't welcome the roadworks and the chaos they'll cause, but actually to get some commencement of works, certainly from my perspective, they're very welcome, and I think probably from many members of this committee and many of our residents. So thank you very much for that report. I've got Councillors Harper and Rose, Councillor Harper is a visiting member who wishes to speak on this item. So Councillor Harper, would you like to speak, please? And Councillor Rose afterwards, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's just really on two of the items. The first one is on 2.2, which is the A20 Cold Harbour roundabout, which is the roundabout for accessing the M20 from the London Road direction. I can remember addressing one of these meetings when this was earlier in the planning stages with an element of scepticism in terms of the proposal to remove the current traffic lights from it, when typically with motorway junctions they tend to get more traffic lights installed than taken away. But I'm sure our experts at KCC have done their homework. The only thing on that one I'd say is when it was interesting reading paragraph 2.2.2, because that refers to future proofing and providing all the cabling so that traffic lights could be reinserted into this junction, which makes me wonder whether, without saying it, that we will find the new roundabout will be built and within a few months or perhaps a year or so, we'll suddenly get traffic lights reinserted and we'll be back to where we were potentially before the money was spent. But obviously time will tell on that point. Hopefully I'll be proved wrong, because otherwise it could be a waste of public money. The other item I just wanted to comment on was the A26 scheme, which is paragraph 2.5 in the report, which is the Fountain Junction. People over in West Maidstone will know that chaos is often generates at particular times. Like most junctions, for the bulk of the time it works perfectly well. In the rush hour, it often frequently gridlocks up, and then you get the traffic tailing up and down Tunbridge Road and also up and down Hermitage Lane and Farley Lane. Whilst obviously, the officer was referring to the longer term, which is to demolish the Fusion restaurant and build a big roundabout there, subject to Section 106. It's clear that at the moment there's not much evidence of when that may occur. It's just going to be sometime in the future. And I just wondered whether any consideration perhaps could be given to looking at interim proposals, because whilst the longer term thing might be, I'm sure it would work, if we're looking at something which could be, 1, 2, 3, 4 years away, there's no, we're not actually helping the residents in the area at the moment. And I just wondered, and I remember at the Fant Farm public inquiry, Kent County Council highways officers at that stage looking into two ideas to actually extend stopping lanes or turning lanes on both sides of Tunbridge Road on that junction to create a bit more road space, and that would require an element of taken in some highway verge. So I just wonder perhaps if the officers and the committee could look into potentially the merits of that, as I say, as an interim thing, which would at least give residents a bit of mitigation whilst the longer term scheme is being looked into. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Barry, do you want to comment on that? Is that something you could look at perhaps and bring back to us?
Yeah, so I'll just come back to the Cold Harbour point as a comment. So modelling has been completed, and we've got no other reference point. We need to rely on the modelling work that's carried out by our technical experts. It's based on traffic data and the local plan sites that are coming forward in the future. The reference to, so we're confident the roundabout design will work. The reference to the signals is we're not putting cabling in. All we're doing is putting some ducting in, really relatively inexpensive ducting. Whilst we've got the road dug up, we're putting in to avoid potential roadworks in the future if for any reason we have to install signals. Traffic flows, as everyone appreciates, are very unpredictable. Developments come forward at different times. Local plan revisions, more sites coming forward generates more traffic. So it's only sensible that we take every measure to safeguard the road network and future-proof it where we can. So that's a comment on the A20. In terms of the interim scheme for the Fountain Junction, I'll be honest, it's not a junction that I'm have dealt with personally, so I don't know the full history on it, but I'm more than willing to go back and investigate, see if there's any interim measures that can come forward in the short term.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Harper, does that answer your questions for the moment?
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm pleased that the office is going to go away and look at interim ideas. So yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Chairman, could I just interject about the Fountain Junction? Originally, as far as I remember, the whole reason that all got through was because the answer was they were going to rephase the lights, which at the time everyone was eminently sceptical about, quite rightly so too. But if that was being considered then, why can it not be considered now?
Barry, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so I would need to, in terms of phasing signals, we've got our own ITS team that I would need to defer to in terms of how the signals can function. I think it's fair to point out that with many of these junctions within Maidstone, these are historic problems that have been there for numbers of years. If there was a simple solution, we would delivered it by now. And
you're very optimistic.
There's nothing simple about solving Maidstone's traffic problems, dare I say.
No, sorry, that's what I'm saying. So sorry, did that not come out right? Sorry, what? Sorry, I said what? Most of the sites are very constrained. So if there was a simple solution, it would have been delivered by now. I will certainly consult with our signals team to see if there's anything that can be brought forward for those signals. But I would imagine that they're running at the optimum phasing without doing any major changes to the actual infrastructure there. But again, I can go back and check with the signals team and come back to you.
Thank you, Barry. That would be welcome. Thank you, and thank you, John, for your interjection there. And I've got Councillor Rose who wishes to speak as a visiting member. So, Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to thank you to Barry for very interesting comments, which I think are very worthwhile. Also to agree with Councillor Harper, especially focusing on the Fountain Junction. I don't really think a lot of residents would be particularly happy with seeing a roundabout bung there. Also, all the description of changing the area, and also it can be thought, when I heard about it, wasn't there a sinkhole there just a little while ago? We don't want a sinkhole and the roundabout disappearing into a sinkhole. So anyway, that's just my brief comment. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. I think I'll just say don't even go there with sinkholes. Councillor Chittenden, were you indicating you wished to speak?
I do indeed, but not in the ones that people think I was speaking about it. I'll leave anything to the south of the town to others should they wish to raise any comment. I will just mention, in Dan's absence, this is with Cold Harbour, the officers have all said they didn't think they needed lights, and that's what their calculations showed. But Dan was very concerned about this, so they did agree to put the ductwork in case it was necessary, because after all, the biggest problem of doing the lights, other than the additional cost, is getting the ductwork under the road when it's very, very busy. So it is a very sensible, very cheap, very quick solution. So that's how that came about. With the regard to Fountain Lane, again, trying to help, and I know Barry's only just come into this one, but I've been sitting on it with Dan and Rob Bird for the last 2 or 3 years, and we've tried a number of options. The ones about the changes to the lights disappeared a long time ago. It just never did work, and we looked at a series of options with regard to turning into a larger one-way system. I think it's Andrews Road, something like that. And that was turned down as well. And we looked at changing the lights down by the fish and chip shop, and that was turned down. And finally, we came up with an option that would require to buy land. And we had 6 meetings, I think, altogether. I was there, only Dan was there, Rob was there, and Ash was there for Ashley Kimmons. And we came up with a design which I think in the end everybody recognised was the sort of main design to run with. With regard to the money, Barry, I thought we had 600,000 or something, but the rest we were hoping to get off of the Crowd site, which in fact at Tunbridge and Morning at the moment have turned it down, which may be a disadvantage, because I've got a funny feeling they're going to come back and take it to appeal, in which case I hope we can still get some money out of it in 6 months' time or so. Is that correct, as far as the finance is concerned?
Yeah, sorry, and I'm not familiar with the actual sites themselves, but I'm aware that certainly one of the most recent planning applications that was going to fund the scheme was rejected.
Yeah. It's a big one, which means a lot of people around there are happy it's been rejected, but I think there was a bit of a shock it was rejected, and I got a feeling everybody thought, oh dear, here we go, we'll lose the 106 money, because I think KCC allocated a fair amount of money from that on 106 to do Fountain Lane, and that means it's delayed, and hopefully there's still options to negotiate if they do go to appeal. I think that's where you stand at the present. I'm sure you're looking at alternative finances. Sorry, Chairman, I jumped in because I do know a lot about it.
That's okay. Thank you. I'm just very mindful that Barry's got to go in about 12 minutes. So I've got Rob Jarman that would like to speak, and then Councillor Clark. So Mr. Jarman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, picking up on what Councillor Chittenden was saying, when the Oakapple Lane application on the western side of Hermitage Lane was reported to Planning Committee, even if one added up all the existing and potential Section 106 agreement monies on sort of both sides of the border, it was substantially well short of the projected cost of £3.2 million. So in straightforward terms, in order to plug the gap, certainly on the Maidstone side, one would need to make use of community infrastructure levy monies. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jarman. Councillor Clark, and then I've got Councillor Wilson. So Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really going to focus on those in the south of the town. The experimental traffic order, my assumption is that during that time there will be consultation sort of during the traffic, while the traffic order is in place rather than before, given the time frame between now and the 14th of February. Will you be, I've got a couple of questions, I'll put them out, and obviously the officer can come back at the end. The first thing is, will you be monitoring traffic flows through the Shepway estate towards the South Park Road roundabout? That is something that many residents in that area were concerned that if ever that Cranbourne Avenue was closed, it would put a strain into the estate as such. I'm interested to know whether that temporary traffic order will also involve lights at Plains Avenue, and if it does, will they be there from day one, or will that be something that will be progressed based on what you're finding from the point at which closure takes place? I'm also interested to know about the design for the Wheatsheaf Junction. That was slightly scaled back since it went to consultation. It had 2 lanes that were going south towards the Sutton Road. It currently has one from the Wheatsheaf Junction going south towards Sutton Balance. The revised model beyond the consultation only has one. In fact, the biggest I guess capacity improvement in the very latest model that I've seen is the fanning out of the lanes as you come down the Sutton Road past the cemetery to the junction. Right at the end there, it fans out into 3 lanes as opposed to 2. And the other improvement I see is that when you're coming when you're coming north down the Lewes Road towards the junction from the fire station, you currently can either turn right or you can go straight into town. That model had a go straight into town, and the right-hand lane could go ahead or turn, but they're really quite minimal improvements over what's currently there compared to what went to consultation. So I'm interested to know, A, is that still the model, the latest one that came out after the consultation, and are there any opportunities to improve capacity there beyond that? My other point is to do with the Bourton Lane junction. I think many did see the fact that the changes there weren't really addressing the problem, which is mainly from the New Line Learning 5 Acre Wood site coming out onto the Lewes Road from Bourton Lane, rather than capacity along the network along the Lewes Road at that point. Is there an opportunity to have 2 lanes starting from the Wheatsheaf Close junction with the A229? Brendan had previously, sorry, not Brendan, the former officer, Russell Borman, had indicated that it would be relatively straightforward to take some land off of the edge there along the fire station because it's KCC owned, and there aren't that much in the way of infrastructure underground at that point. I just wondered if one of the improvements there could be increasing stacking space towards the south there. Quite a few things, I must admit.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll try and cover them. So the first point was around traffic surveys. So yes, the plan is that we will undertake traffic surveys for the junction and to understand how the traffic's been displaced by the closure. We're not planning to install lights at Plains Avenue currently. The reason behind that is we want to see how traffic behaves, and also we want to try and understand the benefits of switching off the Cranbourne lights phase of the junction. You know, that's going to deliver some initial benefits to traffic just by removing that phase from the lights. So we need to understand that before adding in further complications of additional signals at Plains Avenue. So that's our approach on that aspect. In terms of the design of the Wheatsheaf, I don't know if my colleague Alex Beach is on the call or not. He wasn't feeling too great, so I don't know if he's joined. Alex is more close to the detail, but again, part of the benefit of doing the trial closure and obtaining some real data to what actually happens with the lights with Cranbourne switched off. Currently, all that is through modelling and assumptions that are made through the model of how traffic will behave and be displaced. The ability to capture real live data and then to plug that into the design model could potentially allow us to refine the layout and to maximise the potential benefits. Obviously, all of these sites, you know, not only this site, that, as I said before, they're heavily constrained. We are limited to what we can achieve within the footprint of the scheme, but the aim is to maximise the benefit as much as we can. So I probably haven't fully addressed your question about exactly on the layout, but I'm happy to pick this up outside the meeting if you would like.
Sure.
Thank you, Barry. Brian, do you wish to come back on that, or are you happy to pick that up?
It's just a quick one on the potential for stacking along the Lewes Road heading south. Is that something that's been considered?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I missed that point. Yes. So on the approach to the Cripple Street Junction. That is part of the proposal we're looking at the moment, is to increase the southbound approach to Cripple Street and taking it back in front of the fire station. So that will potentially improve the flow to the junction, but it will not deliver any probably significant capacity benefits because just of the pure saturation of traffic on that part of the network. But that's part of the scheme we're looking at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, I've got John Wilson who'd like to speak, and I think he'll be the last person that can actually speak, because I think Barry then needs to leave. So, John Wilson, would you like to ask?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. It really is more of a matter of principle than anything else. Just while the Fountain Crossroads was mentioned, again, can I repeat that a principle that we're all would like to try and apply, in as far as the whole reason that the development was allowed in Hermitage Lane was that there was a solution to the problem that was being caused at the Fountain Crossroads. And we go back to the old thing, it should be infrastructure first. And this is one of the main reasons why we say this, because here we are with all the houses built and we still haven't got a solution in sight for a problem that has been created by the development. And it's very, very wrong. And it's something we should take forward as a group and repeat yet again, infrastructure first. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, John. I see lots of nodding heads there, so I think we all empathise with that comment. If anybody else has any questions, what I'll do is, Barry, I think if I can say thank you very much for your report. I think we're all extremely grateful to have an update on what's going on and to see things are progressing, so I'm very grateful. I'll let you go now, and then I will ask members if there's any other questions, if you'd like to raise them now, and then Olivia will raise them with Barry at a later date. So has anybody else got a question that they'd like to ask? And I'll thank Barry and let him go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spring. Oh, sorry, you're asking the board then. Apologies, I jumped in.
That's right. No, I'm just saying you're free to leave, because I knew you had a time to get away of 10 to. So
Yeah, no,
if you would like to go, I'll say thank you very much. And any other questions we'll pass on to you after the meeting. So thank you, Barry.
Okay. And once again, thank you for accommodating my time constraints.
We aim to please.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anybody else wants to ask any questions, or you can always email them to Olivia at a later date if you don't want to ask them now? Okay, thank you. I understand Councillor Carter, Paul Carter, I think you're now with us in the meeting.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Can I just ask you, do you have any disclosures to tell us, or declarations of interest or disclosures of lobbying, please?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carter. Thank you. So if everyone's happy, I will then move on to item 8, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of January 2021. Has anybody got any comments on these minutes? In that case, I plan to move that minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of January 2021 be agreed as a correct record, subject as a correct record. So I will sign the minutes as a correct record. Has everybody agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Very true.
Thank you very much, members. Moving on to item 9, petitions. We do have a petition this evening, which is outlined on the agenda papers. It's Mr. Stuart Jeffrey, who is attending to present this petition. And Mr. Jeffrey, you're able to speak for a period of up to 5 minutes if you would like to speak on the petition now. Thank you.
So thank you. I'm presenting this petition for a 20-mile-an-hour limit along Belmont Road and its surrounding streets. Many of the UK's larger cities have now adopted 20 miles an hour for their residential streets. Wales is about to implement a 20-mile-an-hour national default for its residential roads. Even the General Assembly of the UN endorses 20 miles an hour speed limits. And the revised, as I'm sure you know, the revised highway code now talks of a priority for the most vulnerable on our roads. More locally, KCC extols the benefits and rather wonderfully, where I live on Buckland Road, we now have a 20-mile-an-hour limit. So there is local, national and international support for the speed generally. In addition, new research has shown that 20 miles an hour reduces nitrous oxide emissions by around 28%, and very important for Maidstone, which has one of the worst air pollution problems in the country. And in addition to reducing pollution, casualties have been shown to reduce by 20% in 20-mile-an-hour zones. Frustratingly, despite all this evidence, there remains no blanket limit in Maidstone, and therefore we're forced to campaign for these street by street. So Belmont Road, it's surrounded by schools, including those in Oakwood Park and along Buckland Road, and it's used as a cut through between London Road and Tunbridge Road. It is a place that urgently needs a 20-mile-an-hour limit. It needs to feel very, very residential. I'm aware that in 2019, Kent County Council proposed a two-stage approach to gaining 20-mile-an-hour limits. Stage one being to verify community support, which it should be instigated and undertaken by a group who will seek local views to establish strong residential support. I present this petition as evidence of that support. Along Buckland Road, Belmont Road itself, almost I think only one house said no to signing the petition, and there was phenomenally strong support. So I therefore ask this committee to put its weight behind the residents and to help facilitate a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit along that road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. Nicely to time. Thank you very much. I have visiting members, Councillors Coates, Harper, Rose and English to speak. So Councillor Coates, are you there? Do you wish to speak? Yeah, I'll move on to Councillor Harper then. I can't hear from Councillor Coates. Councillor Harper, would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, I'm, as people know, in support of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And one of the things I'd be interested to know, and we've been trying for, well, a year, obviously it's a year since the last meeting, is to actually get our petition, which we delivered to Maidstone Council, which was signed by over 800 people, in terms of a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in the Fant ward area. And that just seems to have gone completely into the ether. And I'm aware this current petition's clearly signed by considerably less, with no disrespect to it. I'm a resident of Oakwood Road, and I know a lot of people down Oakwood Road, and nobody's actually, no one I know is aware of this petition. So it's interesting our streets being covered by it. I think there is full merit to Belmont Road and Oakwood Road being looked at, but I think more consultation possibly needs to be done. Oakwood Park Education Campus, which is opposite where I live, has had recently a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit introduced within it. And it seems to me that there may be opportunities to look at the issues around Oakwood Road and Queen's Road, which are the feeder roads into the campus, on a more holistic scale, because it's the volume of traffic, particularly in Oakwood Road, as much as its speed, which is the biggest problem there. So I'd welcome this thing being looked into further, but also on behalf of residents, and as I'm the Vice Chair of the Oakwood Park Community Association, the opportunity to have further discussions with Kent County Council and the Joint Transport Board on this as it's prioritised for being looked into. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. That's noted, Councillor Harper. I've got Councillor Coates. Are you there? If not, I'll move on to Councillor Rose. No, Councillor Rose, would you like to speak on this, please?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to underline the great importance of, especially in what might be described as lower Fant, which is the area nearest the town. I won't go into all the parking problems, but they're narrow roads with parking each side of those roads. The reason, I think one of the main reasons for 20-mile-an-hour limits is to make sure that drivers understand the dangers of driving on those roads, and also to make sure that they are able to stop in time. And especially, I think, when maybe a child may be playing on the pavement, come out between two cars and be killed. Do we want to wait for a child to be killed in one of the Fant roads before we put in 20-mile-an-hour limit? It is very important. And also, I agree with Councillor Harper. I'm upset about this petition that had 800 names on it, and those names all expect this petition to go forward and the importance of it when we're talking about people's lives, when we're talking about, we know children, you know, come running across the road for any particular reason, and 20 mile an hour gives the motorist a chance to possibly slow down in time, and also reminds the motorist of the importance of being careful on those roads and to take it slow. So please, may I beg that this petition be taken forward and we do receive 20 mile an hour in the streets around Fant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Councillor English, would you like to speak now?
Firstly, I will endorse the general comments that Mr. Jeffrey made about 20 mile an hour speed limits. I have long agreed with them, and I think that it's shocking to me that Maidstone appears to be lagging behind the rest of Kent in this respect. Far more, shall we say, ambitious schemes have gone forward elsewhere in the county and let alone across the country. And I think it is time that we actually started to be more ambitious in Maidstone. The Buckland Buckland Road scheme went forward because the local members and the public insisted it go forward and contributed to it. Unfortunately, other schemes have not gone forward. I would hope that the Bournemouth Road one would, once this minor glitch about consultation in Oakwood Road is cleared up, I'm sure that residents will be supportive that this one should go forward. But I would also hope that the stalled petitions, and they've been stalled for some considerable time in Fant and in my own ward, where the Hale Road scheme, which we wanted to see, received overwhelming support from the residents and has been stalled by a strategic planning committee at Maidstone Borough Council on the grounds of awaiting a report from the Joint Transport Board, which I'm not really, which appears to have no apparent likelihood of ever appearing. Now that's been stalled for something like 5 or 6 years now. I really do think that that we really need to actually move forward, but with a number of these schemes. Bournemouth Road, Oakwood Road needs to go forward. So does the Lower Fant scheme or the Hale Road and the Hale Road scheme for proper discussion, even if the result of those proper discussions is that absolutely nothing happens. Because leaving things in limbo for years and years and years and years is the absolutely worst outcome for the public and residents concerned. If at the end of the day the decision is not to take them forward, well, that's not some decision I would agree with, but it is at least a decision. And I would like, you know, us to, you know, bite the bullet and not just leave these things hanging for years and years, because that is when public confidence in local government reaches a very, very low ebb. So I think we need to bring these things forward and act in a proper way and make some decisions. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor English. That is noted. I might come back to you in a minute on how you wish to carry this forward. In the meantime, I'm just going to try once more if Councillor Coates wishes to speak. If not, I'll move on to other members. I've got Councillor Sands and then Councillor Cadker after this. So, Councillor Coates, are you there? No, okay. Councillor Sams, you wished to, Tom Sams, you wish to speak.
Thank you very much. Yes, I suppose that this campaign has been ongoing for years and years and years about the 20 miles per hour speed limit, and I suppose that it's now, I'm quite grateful that it's actually some form of mainstream thinking behind it, and those people who were heretical all those years ago are now being seen to be actually forward-thinking people. I suppose my frustration is, I think, like has already been stated, it takes so long to actually move anything forward. And in the meantime, we do have potentially people, you know, children in particular, being killed by this not being enacted. So I just urgently ask that we do, as you know, the petitioners, Mr. Jeffrey has stated, just get on with it. And perhaps we should be more proactive in actually getting on with it. and residents are still waiting. You know, we heard about residents waiting 5 years, but it's just bloody ridiculous. We can't wait that length of time. And I think this committee could actually make a recommendation that we actually do something. Hello, that's my dog's having a fight. Yay! We could actually make a recommendation to actually do something positively and actually find a path forward. So I do thank Mr. Jeffrey for bringing it forward, and no other councillors' comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sams. I've got Councillor Cadker who also wishes to speak. Councillor Cadker, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally concur and totally agree with the previous speaker, and then I'll totally understand where the Councillor English coming from. 5 years ago, I, along with the High Street Ward Councillor, did the petition on the Hill Road crossing, which Mr. Councillor English was referring to about 5 years ago, and then we go to the same momentum, get the residents, and then it's been totally neglected. I think that somewhere JTB need to just put the foot down and get a bit more credibility to what residents actually raising the issues, and we just not actually reacting to it. It's just they raise the many questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadker. Does anybody else wish to speak on this subject?
Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark. Okay,
yes.
Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Sorry. Yes. So I mean, most people would realise that I've had a bit of a history with 20-mile-an-hour schemes. When I was at county, I was able to implement a scheme along Northumberland Road in Shepway North, and that was based on, at the time, it was based on mean speeds that have to be below a certain level, which is quite counterintuitive, because to get the council and the KCC officers and to get the police to support the scheme, it has to be enforceable. And if you've got a road that is averaging 40 miles an hour, although people may say people speed past my house, it's actually very difficult to get a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in place. But if with traffic calming measures, it's not so difficult. So where there's a will, there's a way. But the thing that we really haven't done is pick up on low-hanging fruit over the course of time. I brought to this committee the notion of 20-mile-an-hour schemes as the default across Kent for any new builds. And when that was debated, there were all manner of arguments against doing that. For instance, most of the designs are already, they already have 20 miles an hour designed in. But the big difference that I think that was lost on participants in that debate is the fact that if you make it a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit and somebody goes through that estate that's been designed for 20 at 30, it is completely inappropriate, more so than it would be in a regular 20-year-old estate, because the roads have been constrained to actually try to force people to 20. But if somebody shoots through there, take, for instance, Hell Park estate at the top of Postley Road at 30, there's a very good chance that there will be an accident with a child or somebody stepping out, but just because of the nature of the roads and the way they've designed. However, if somebody does hit somebody, they're not breaking the law. They're involved in a road traffic accident, and most residents would look at it and say, wow, that person came hurtling around at an inappropriate speed. But if we leave them at 30 miles an hour, technically they're doing nothing wrong legally. If we enforce a 20-mile-an-hour limit on new builds, and that person kills somebody, then the police can take action against them for breaking the law. And I think that's a subtlety that was lost with some members in that discussion. And I see no reason why new developments aren't 20 miles an hour. If we're designing them, if the default is to design them for 20 miles an hour, why don't we make them 20 mile an hour across Kent? I think that we're really behind on this. I think we should be doing a significant amount more to bring the speeds down on side roads. Trunk roads, fair enough, we keep them moving, but on side roads and estates, they should all be 30 in my opinion. Oh, they should all be 20 in my opinion, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I was going to say, with some of the appallingly designed roads and lack of parking, I think to achieve 20 is an achievement on some new estates. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? No, I've got nobody else. How do members wish to take this forward? I'd like to conclude this. I think the normal process would be to pass this petition on to the Cabinet member at KCC. Does anybody wish to ask for a report to come back? I'm open to ideas. Councillor Cook.
If you're looking for a motion, I think traditionally what you just said is the way we've progressed the petitions, and that we pass them over to KCC to progress, because at the end of the day, quite obviously, this is a decision for David Brazier and as cabinet member for highways, and I mean, I think it's a matter for KCC to look at, and I do think it's appropriate, though, that where we hand petitions over, that maybe our officers could put that into the work programme, so we see what the conclusion of the in the way that Councillor English was describing earlier, what is decided.
Okay, so Councillor Cook, would that be a proposal that?
Yes, it is. I'm proposing that
this petition is passed to the Cabinet member at KCC. Could somebody second that, please?
Sorry, what can you summarise the proposal?
The proposal is that the petition be passed to the Cabinet member at KCC for their attention. But do we wish to have a report come back? Gary, do you want to come back?
What I said, Val, was that in doing that, we ought to put it into the petitions into the work programme, so we can see how matters, then have a report on how matters are progressing. Because I do take the point that colleagues were making earlier, that these were seemingly disappearing into the ether. And I think that's not what we want. So and I accept that point. So rather than demand, I just think it would be respectful of KCC to provide us with an update from time to time, and we put that we do that via the work programme.
Thank you. I'm just being told that petitions are subject to KCC's petition requirements. I think it's up to KCC to assess whether it meets the requirements.
Yeah.
So if you're happy to propose that the petition is passed to the Cabinet member at Kent County Council for their attention, and that an item be put on the work programme to receive a report back on the progress of the petition, would that meet with members' acceptance?
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
It would. So Councillor Cook is proposing the petition. I think Councillor Cumming, you were going to second that petition. Is that correct? That recommendation? Thank you. Members, is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Any dissent? Thank you. So on that case, that will be done. Thank you very much, members.
Well, sorry, before sorry, Bucking, it's Tom Sam here. Sorry to butt in, but there was talk about, and there was muted about having a default position for Maidstone, and I understand why we've given it over to KCC as it is correct to do so, but I think there are councillors did feel that looking at a default position for Maidstone could be investigated and brought back to this committee, because we're doing it by bit, as someone has already said, and I don't think that the bit by bit approach will actually get an awful lot done over a long term. So can we look at bringing back a report on how it could be done generally for the borough where appropriate, please?
That's quite a wide avenue. Can you just 1 moment? I've just discussed. Okay, I've been advised that because technically we have taken the vote, we can't actually alter anything at the moment. So that vote will stand and that item is concluded. I will raise the item or the item, if you'd like to raise the item on the next agenda setting for the next JTB and word exactly what you want, Councillor Sands. I think that would be a way to take that forward.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Val. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you very much. That's excellent. Thank you. So we're now going to item 10, which is question and answer session from members of the public. I've got 3 questions from members of the public this evening. The first one is from Mr. Chris Passmore. So Mr. Passmore, if you're there, if you would like to ask your question, please.
Yeah, good evening, councillors. Thank you for allowing me to ask this question. In this capacity, I'm representing Merlin, and we're campaigning to protect green space and encouraging active travel across northwest Maidstone. Picking up on John Wilson's point that infrastructure first. Obviously, there's no one silver bullet to solving our transport problems in Maidstone. But clearly one avenue we must investigate is active travel and using cycle lanes particularly for ultra short journeys. And I do suggest that quite a lot of the congestion in Hermitage Lane is through ultra short journeys, which could, if we had adequate cycle lanes and active travel in that area, reduce the congestion in that area and allow traffic to flow a bit more freely up and down Hermitage Lane. We are discussing at a number of times a planned cycle track along Hermitage Lane from Maidstone Hospital all the way to Barming Station. But there is actually one major problem in my view, and that is the bridge over the railway to access Barming Station, which can only be accessed from the north side, is only 2.5 metres wide. And that is incredibly narrow if you're trying to get cyclists and pedestrians over that bridge. And what I'm asking is, when we get that cycle lane built, are we taking into account getting that bridge in some way widened to allow passengers and cyclists to access the north side of Barming Station through Hermitage Lane?
Thank you, Mr. Passmore. Not quite to the original text of the question, but we got to the question in the end. The answer I have here is that the estimated cost for the scheme has included for the provision of a shared cycleway footway over the bridge. The shared cycleway footway design over the bridge will not widen the bridge, but provides a facility within the existing highway boundary. Depending upon restrictions found on site, the facility may need to be narrower than 2.5 metres or substandard for a short length. Mr. Passmore, do you have a supplementary question arising from the original question or reply, or are you content with that answer at the moment?
I'm content with that answer at the moment, thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Mr. Passmore. I've now got Mr. Stuart Jeffrey who would like to ask a question. So, Mr. Jeffrey, would you like to pose your question, please?
Thank you. The question is simple. During the financial year 2020 to 2021 across this borough, how much was spent by Maidstone Borough Council and Kent County Council on road schemes, excluding speed reductions, cycling improvement and pedestrian improvements?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Jeffrey. You'll appreciate that covers quite a huge volume of work. So what I've requested that Kent County Council officers provide a written response to your question so that they can actually get the right answer to be provided to you at a later date. That's to make sure that the response you get is accurate. Do you have any further supplementary question arising from the original question, or do you want to wait for their response and then bring it up next time?
If I could ask whether there is some sort of deadline or expectation around the time that Kent County Council will take to respond, that would be really helpful.
Okay, I obviously don't have access to that at the moment, but we will make sure that we do chase that up to make sure the response is prompt for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffrey. And the third question is from Mr. Duncan Edwards. Duncan, if you're there, would you like to ask your question, please?
Good evening, councillors. Duncan Edwards from the Maidstone Cycle Campaign Forum. The question is as follows. The traffic issues at Hart Street, Sparker Road, which are on the agenda, item 14 for this meeting. There are no options on the material which is being presented to the committee, which, in the words of the National Policy Planning Framework, identify measures required to improve accessibility and safety for all modes of travel, particularly for alternatives to the car, such as walking, cycling and public transport. Without these options on the table, don't we run the risk of not finding the most effective, sustainable and working solutions to this issue?
Thank you very much, Duncan, for your question. Hart Street and Barker Road are both well served with alternative options for walking and cycling. To the east of the site, there's the Medway footpath with a bridge over the river linking the site to the Old College Horseway. The Medway footpath then surrounds the entire southern perimeter of the site and connects into a further bridge crossing the river to the west at Wharf Road. At this point, there's also a ramped access over the railway line heading north to Bower Lane. To the north of the site, there is pedestrian and cycle access available from Hart Street via Station Approach or via the Barker Road junction onto the A20 Broadway, which is served by a push-button crossing and wide footways. Pedestrians and cyclists can also avoid the Barker Road junction should they choose by using the ramped access to the northeast along the river. This means that there are 5 or 6 options for pedestrians and cyclists when choosing to enter or exit the site. Unfortunately, the main issue at this location is that there is only one vehicular access and exit point onto the A20 Broadway at Barker Road. The issues experienced at this site are not associated with a lack of active travel provision, nor any evidenced pedestrian or cyclist safety, but more around congestion for vehicular traffic. None of the proposals put forward in this JTB report will have negative impacts on active travel, as is shown and detailed in the report. Mr. Edwards, do you have a supplementary question arising out of the original question or response?
Yes, if I may. Absolutely noted all of those points that are made. But what I would observe is that the none of those provisions which have been listed are properly organised, properly integrated, or even signposted. For example, if you come out of Maidstone West Station, you're given no indication as to which direction you should travel in. And in addition, the gyratory is recognised across Kent, actually, as a massive barrier and danger to active travel. So while I thoroughly understand the objectives which have been set for this particular item of the agenda, I'm seeking to highlight to councillors and just put it into councillors' minds that there will be short journeys occurring through that junction. And if we can find ways of smoothing the way and using the existing provision to give a better integrated transport network for walkers and cyclists, we can have a very cost-effective partial solution to some of those issues.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. I think the point you're making about signposting is quite a valid point, and I think that needs to be passed back to the officers. I know it's a complex area, obviously, especially with a view to our discussion going on later. But I think that needs passing back to officers, so I'll ensure that is done. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you.
That now concludes the question and answer session from members of the public. I will therefore move on to item 11, which is the committee work programme. Do any members or officers in attendance have any comments to make on the work programme at the moment? That's a nice silence. I like that. So in that case, I move that the work programme be noted. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And we then move on to item 12, which is the A229 and the A249 links between the M2 and M20, and concurrently item 15, which is the A229 Bluebell Hill Improvement Scheme. Both of these items will be introduced by Lee Birchall. So Lee, if you're there, if you'd like to commence, please.
I am, Chair. Thank you. Good evening to the board. As the Chair said, my name's Lee Birchall. I'm from KCC Highways, presenting this item for members' information. In way of an introduction, this important project has been promoted as part of the Department for Transport's large local majors fund. And to date, it's been positively received by central government. In August 2020, we undertook a public consultation on the scheme, and this report basically outlines the next steps required as we continue to progress through the lengthy business case requirements to unlock this necessary funding. So I'll leave it there, Chair, if that's okay, and happy to take any questions any of the members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Birchall. I've got no visiting members registered to speak. Are there any members of the committee that wish to comment on these reports, or do you wish the reports to be noted? Anybody wish to speak?
Yeah, I've stuck my hand up, Chairman.
Councillor Carter, thank you. Sorry, I think at the beginning, I do apologise, at the beginning I've asked if people can pop a note in the IM that just said they'd like to speak, because I can't keep track of all the hands. There's so many people. So Councillor Carter, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a long overdue scheme, and I think significantly important with its link to the Third Thames Crossing. I'm just going to ask Lee on where we are on getting diggers on the ground and the Third Thames Crossing funded and progressed, because the government keeps going wobbly and not deciding whether or not it's in the capital spending programme for Highways England's capital programme. And this, the reason why it's so important is that if one of the tunnels or bridges or other tunnel, the Third Thames Crossing, the bifurcation and the opportunity to link the M20 to the M2 is absolutely significant, and it's either Bluebell Hill or it's the A249, and therefore what's the progress on the Third Thames Crossing, and what's the timeline on getting all of the work that's been designed completed and finished?
That's a really good question, Paul. As you know, the reason we promoted this scheme was that as part of the Lower Thames Crossing scheme that was originally there, we in Kent promoted the variant that looked at the upgrade of Bluebell Hill, which wasn't included. You're absolutely right, the development consent orders have been delayed, and the Department for Transport are obviously asking us to carry out more modelling in regards to our scheme. I think the most important part is that we make sure we continue to progress this so that it is open and available before the Lower Thames Crossing, if it is to come forward, opens to traffic. And again, as you know, Paul, there's so many hoops to go through. We've made good progress to date, but there's still an awful lot of work to do, which Vicky's outlined in the report under 3.4. So we're trying to secure the approval of DFT to progress to the next stage later this year, which will allow us to progress through, do further design. We're going to need planning on this and further detailed design before that final business case is signed off. Would you believe in what we're looking at the moment is 25, 26 before construction can begin in 2026. So still an awful amount of work to be done. But as I say, positive progress has been made to date.
Thank you very much. Paul, are you happy with that?
Very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I've got to Councillor Chittenden, then Councillor Cummings. So Councillor Chittenden.
Thank you. I think we're all in agreement on this, and it's absolutely essential that we get this in place. I think the Lower Thames Crossing has now gone back to completion 2029. I think that's right, which means we've got a little bit more time to do with it, which thank goodness, because there's a lot of money and a lot of efforts needed. Well done, Lee, in progressing it. I think you've got a tough couple of years ahead of you to make it work. We look forward to seeing good progress within that time. I'll just say that I'm pleased, I think this is the one, is that you've noted that option 3 has been pulled. Whilst it provided a number of benefits, there was significant impacts on the M20 and the local area. Now, I think this is the one where they had considerable, massive scheme work down in that junction. And if I remember, it was tearing the whole local area from the countryside point of view apart. So if that's the one I'm correct about, junction 3, then I'm delighted it's been withdrawn. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ian. Councillor Cumming.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Traffic on Bluebell Hill coming southeast between the M2 and the M20 has a dedicated slip road straight onto the M20. Now, could there not be a slip road for the traffic on Bluebell Hill going northwest to join the M2? Because your summary says a new slip road onto the M2 westbound after the Lord Lees roundabout. So it's not going to improve things very much as it is. It really needs both directions to have similar access onto the motorways they're heading for. Thank you.
Lee, can you comment on that?
Can I come back on that, Chair?
Yes,
it's a really good point. As I say, as part of the options appraisal, we've tried to look at all options available. Obviously, as you can see from the cost of the scheme, it's a huge scheme anyway, and we need to take into account land take and available land and what that will cost, which is then taken into account the cost benefit that then goes forward to the Department for Transport, whether it is appraised as returning value for money. So it's certainly something that we're reviewing. We're continuing to look at all options available to us. But yeah, I take the councillor's point. It's frustrating that we can't do exactly what we want, but there's a lot going on at that network between Lord Lees and Taddington, which we need to take account of.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Anybody else wish to comment on this item? The report is just for noting, so if there's no further comments, then I would propose the report is noted. I hear silence. Is
agreed.
Report noted. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Thank you. So the next item is item 13, which I propose to take item 13 now, which is the update on the Kent Rail strategy. And then immediately after that item, I'd just like to propose we have a little 5 to 10 minute break, a comfort break, if that's okay with members. So I'll take item 13 now, which is the update on the Kent Rail strategy 2021 to 2026. And the report will be introduced by Mark Welsh.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an update on the Kent Rail strategy. That strategy was adopted by the Council in March 2021. We started writing it in early 2020, having made a decision in 2019. And as the report sets out, although we've made some progress with developing some of the proposals that were in the Kent Rail strategy, it's of course been done in the context and environment of the rather profound shock that's happened to the rail industry, amongst other parts of the transport industry. But nonetheless, we have made some progress. I think it's very important to emphasise that the core purpose of the Kent Rail strategy was to set out clearly to government and the rail industry, KCC's view on what a future southeastern franchise should entail in terms of services. The Kent Rail strategy was written on the assumption of effectively a recovery from the pandemic shock over the next couple of years, and that on the whole we would be striving to achieve a level of service which was supplemental to the baseline of effectively the 2019 rail network and its services on the Southeastern network in Kent. Now, shortly after adopting the Kent Rail strategy, we had the Williams-Shapps Rail Review take place. It was published and set out, again, quite substantial changes proposed subject to legislation, but effectively the establishment of Great British Railways and a fundamental change into how the rail industry in England would be structured and run. In addition to that, as well, as we all know very well, over the summer of 2021 into the autumn, there were also changes in relation to South Eastern franchise, a bit moving under the operator of last resort, and that having an effect, therefore, on the timetable with which government will move the South Eastern network along its stepped process of the eventual outcome of the Great British Railways reforms, which is new network rail contracts. They're called NRCs, on the basis of them being a concession model. So at the moment, South Eastern is currently entirely run and has been, staff tupied into government, the operator of last resort. And that was largely a seamless process, which has been good for passengers in Kent. And reflects really the underlying, as South Eastern colleagues have said to me, reflects that the underlying causes of that change into the operator of last resort was not due to passenger services themselves on the ground, but as we know, due to the financial issues that were raised over the summer in their parent company. As the report sets out, we've made some progress on particular aspects. We made a bid to the Levelling Up Fund. We've continued to support local borough and district councils with specific rail project work, such as Folkestone Hive and the Otterpool Park Development Company on their feasibility work associated with a new station to serve that development at Western Hangar. We've also lobbied over 2021, continue to lobby for clarity and progress on the improvements to the services to Maidstone, to the City of London. That, of course, being a council position, as the Kent Rail strategy sets out, being ideally Thameslink, but recognising that any improvement as a step towards that would be welcome. And as we know, in November, South Eastern announced that on, I think, the 21st, Monday, the 21st of February this year, their planned timetable change will include some additional off-peak services from Blackfriars semi-fast to Maidstone. However, as far as I know, it is the case that those services will still come into operation. However, it's important, I think, to recognise, as I was hearing from Steve Wyatt, the new Chief Executive at South Eastern today, that Omicron has had a significant effect to rail recovery and bus recovery as well. But on rail recovery, it has caused a slump again in demand. So at the moment, we are looking to there being a need for effectively a resumption of that recovery in the new year as the Omicron restrictions and I guess effect hopefully starts to subside. I think that's everything on the paper, Chair. So questions, if there are any.
Thank you very much, Mr. I don't know if it's Welch or Welsh, so I do apologise. I think it's Welch, isn't it? I think I'd mispronounced it earlier, so I do apologise. I've got Councillor Harper who wishes to speak on this. So before I come to you, Councillor Harper, I've got three, I think they're legacy hands up from Councillors Clark, Carter and Chittington. So if you wouldn't mind popping your hands down and we'll try and keep a note then of who else wants to speak on this topic. So Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was the officer answered one of the points I was going to mention, which was obviously about getting the Thameslink service to Maidstone East into action. And it sounds like there's a possibility we're going to see something later this sort of winter into the spring. So that would be good news. Hopefully it won't have many stops, because we obviously used to have the Cannon Street, which only stopped at West Malling, and then it was direct through to Cannon Street, which I used to use for getting up to London for meetings. The other thing is obviously, and I'm sure KCC will do this, is just to make sure, or lobby to make sure that the current three times a day high-speed trains from Maidstone West up to St Pancras eventually return in full when when the rail industry starts to get back to normal. So those are just the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harper. Mr. Welch, I presume we note those comments. There's nothing you wish to add to that?
No, I think I can just confirm that my understanding is that the new services in February, the off-peak services to Blackfriars, will be the semi-fast type of service that call West Malling, Borough Green, Otford and Swanley, then on into London. So we won't be stopping all stations. So good for those that can use them and are looking for that quicker journey time to the city. And then just on the high-speed point, absolutely. And again, or despite the impacts to the rail industry nationally and within our own county, nonetheless, the success of the high-speed network and its kind of critical role really across the county means that we have continued to work with partners over the last year, lobbying and making the case to government for effectively a long-term plan for ensuring there is the sufficient fleet and that fleet can expand so that we can extend and provide more high-speed services to as many people as possible across Kent, because it's clear over the last decade before the pandemic that high speed really was one of the rail success stories really in the country, with very substantial growth and Kent benefiting substantially from it. So we want to preserve the high speed benefits where they are already in the county.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think we're all aware of how COVID has had a devastating impact on the railways, and I think any new service is welcome. So that the new one you're talking about, that semi-high speed, is a welcome service. So thank you very much. I've got a couple of hands still up from Councillors Carter and Chittenden. Did you wish to speak on this item, or?
Yes, please.
You do. Okay, Councillor Chittenden first, then, please.
Thank you. Mark, you bring good news, or it sounds as if it's good news that may go away and come back again. I don't know. Perhaps so I can understand in full what's gone on and what the sort of the main points of being able to keep pushing on this is concerned. I might talk to you outside of the meeting if that's okay, but well done. You obviously haven't stopped chasing our Thames Link service. It doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't matter how many people use it. With the more the merrier, but it's never going to be the same as it was. But at the same time, we still want something faster than what we've got. We see other areas getting the fast track, getting the faster trains, and Maidstone has been neglected, and somehow we've got to overcome it. So I'll have a chat with you outside the meeting. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Carter, did you wish to comment on this item? No, okay. Does anybody else wish to speak? Any hands I've missed? Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Because the report is for noting. So if nobody else wishes to speak, I will ask for members' acceptance to note the report, please.
Noted.
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 Superb. Thank you very much.
Noticed.
It is 18:39. I would certainly welcome the chance to whiz off and make a cup of tea. So I would like to propose that we stop the meeting temporarily for the moment and return. I don't know if you want 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So if I say 18, as a 5-minute hand, then 18:45. Well said. I was just going to say that figure. So if we can return at 18:45, please, members, with our fresh cups of tea, and then we'll be raring to go on item 14. Thank you.
All right. Could it just be confirmed that the webcast has paused, please? Thank you.
6:45, it's only a very short break, but hopefully that's sufficient for members. Would members like me to take a roll call, or are we happy that those that wish to come back are back?
I think we just move on, Val.
Super.
On. Yeah.
That sounds fine by me. Thank you very much. So we're at the exciting part of the evening now, which is item 14, Hart Street. It's got Baker Road, I think it's Barker Road options report. The report is going to be introduced by Jenny Watson and Gary Peake. So Jenny and Gary, if you're there, if you'd like to start your report, please.
Thank you. Yes, we're both here, so I will present it. This report is brought to the board for discussion following investigations in relation to measures for reducing queuing and congestion within Lockmeadow Estate, and specifically Barker Road and Hart Street, and in turn the impact this then has on the Maidstone gyratory. These concerns have been an issue for several years as Lockmeadow Estate has grown and was exacerbated during the pandemic 2020 lockdown, mainly due to the high number of customers visiting McDonald's drive-through. The scheme's planning and delivery team are currently investigating various options which are presented within this report. See pages 3 and 6 of our report and Appendix A showing the option drawings. Traffic surveys have also been undertaken which can be seen in Appendix B. Following discussions with local stakeholders, including residents, businesses and local councillors, the preference was to look at a longer-term solution. Part of these discussions did include an experimental one-way traffic order, but this did not prove popular with the stakeholders. We recommend in paragraph 4.3 to progress a longer-term solution as shown in our options 5 and 6. Funding is available to progress further design work, which will allow a better understanding of the suitability of this improvement and would also include a cost estimate as additional funds for construction would be required. A separate report would be brought to a further JTB following completion of these designs. Paragraph 4.4 recommends progressing a route through the station car park to act as a relief road during particularly busy periods. And paragraph 3.14 will show you further details. This land is currently owned by Network Rail and South Eastern Railway, and initial discussions have taken place with both parties suggesting support. Again, funding is available to progress the designs and progress land agreements, with a further report being brought back to the JTB for consideration. At the pre-JTB meeting this week, discussions did take place regarding whether the experimental order should be progressed, and I seek your recommendations as to whether this should be included as an option, bearing in mind local objections. That is basically it, and myself and Gary, who is here, will be happy to try and answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
She says with a slightly nervous tone to her voice.
I'm really nervous, yeah.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
I have councillors Harper, Nagy, English and Rose to speak on this item. So Councillor Harper, would you like to go first, please?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is in my ward in Fant, so it's an area I'm very familiar with and had lots of discussions with the various stakeholders I know who've been to the meetings. Janine's been talking about, but I've also had opportunities to talk to a lot of the residents who live down Hart Street, of which there's well over 750 flats. So we're talking of a resident population of a couple of thousand people. I think looking at the options, obviously, yeah, but yes, how many more options could we have? You know, there's lots of options in this paper, and I'm glad there's actually the diagrams came through, because when I was reading it, it's going to be a lot easier to explain the sort of situation, the position I'm coming from, having had discussions, I say, with more residents over the last few months around this issue. I think one of the things we need to also bear in mind is the question from Duncan Edwards earlier from the Maidstone Cycle Campaign Forum, which, as most of you know, I'm the chair of, in terms of thinking of how do we make sure that any junction changes actually don't deter active travel. And one of the things I would say is looking at some of the bigger proposals. So if you look at your options maps, if we think of a scheme on the scale of option 6, where we would have you'd have 4 lanes of traffic, 2 going in each direction, you would effectively be replicating what people who live in this side of town where I live, what we have to face when we crossed over the river to get into the bottom of the high street, where you've got 2 lanes of traffic each way with that pedestrian refuge in the middle. The danger is that type option 6 would end up giving us a similar road junction to cross on our side of the river, get over the bridge, and then got to cross over a similar type of thing, which could be a major deterrent to pedestrians in particular. And I frequently witness at this junction and at the one at the bottom of the high street, dangerous manoeuvres by pedestrians, sort of second guessing traffic just to get across it. So as I say, that's one of the things we need to really bear in mind in terms of designing junctions, just how pedestrians will actually use it and interact with it. There clearly is a need to do something here. Janine mentioned in particular myself and Margaret Rose, who Margaret Rose instigated these most recent discussions, as she said earlier, was from during the lockdown with McDonald's, when restaurants were allowed to open, the phenomenal increase in traffic into the McDonald's led to more residents contacting the local councils than I think we've ever had on this. And this issue has been ongoing, but that exacerbated it. And clearly the work the council's done on Lock Meadow itself, and to make Lock Meadow a success would increase traffic even further with the new cinema and so on. So something does need to be done. I think we need to try to do something fairly quick in this area. And I hear what Janine said, but talking with residents more recently, I think there is support for some of the smaller options, even if they're only an interim option. So, where obviously the report's referring to ultimately looking at larger options, which aren't in any budget, which could cost £1/3 million upwards, and the money would have to be found from somewhere. Some of the earlier options and the smaller ones could probably be done within the type of money available, the sort of £30,000 plus the money you've got for design, because they're just making an element of the road one way or reversing one way. And as I say, talking with residents, the proposal or option 3 seems to be coming with a fair amount of favour from residents. I noticed one of the concerns on it was a reference to access to B&Q, but access to B&Q is obviously only fairly sporadic. Whilst obviously they have deliveries, they only have a relatively small number of deliveries a day. And actually most of the issues we actually have down with this junction, again, are only periodic. For 9/10, if not more, 95% of the time, this junction flows fairly well. It's literally at times when, for instance, the cinemas are coming out, or in the rush hour where you've got people coming out from the relevant retail units, that's when the biggest gridlocking occurs. So, as I say, what we need to think about is how we can devise, perhaps, as I say, an interim thing which would help address those things. I think option 3, for instance, would enable those to be addressed, whilst if you wish to, look at the issues around going through the railway station and or either options 6 or 7. But mine and the residents' concern is that unless we do a fairly small scheme now, if we just put all our eggs in, the long-term scheme, it would be a bit like the Hermitage Lane junction, the Fountain junction we discussed earlier. Everybody knows that the Hermitage the Fountain's been a problem for decades, yet there's no money to do anything on. I think the concern would be that if we don't do a quick fix, at least for the first year or two, and see how that works, the danger is that by the time you get the money available for the bigger schemes, will be years down the road, and the residents living there, their life will continue to deteriorate as more and more developments and use goes on in that area. So as I say, I'd urge that the committee look to consider requesting that more work's done on option 3, at least as an interim, to see how it works over a year or two, relatively small cost, whilst not precluding the ability to go over a bigger scheme in the longer term, but just to wait for a long-term solution and do nothing for the next year or more really won't really help the residents down there. Sorry, I took a bit longer than I expected, but I hope everyone's got the gist of what I was saying. Thank you.
I have to say I concur with your comments, Councillor Harper. I think a do nothing would drive people crazy. So I concur with what you're saying. I've now got Councillor Rose and then Councillor, I'm not sure if I've got it in the same line here. So Councillor Rose, if you don't mind, then Nagi, then English. Apologies if I've changed the order.
All right, thank you, Chair. I absolutely do agree very much with Councillor Harper. I was drawn into this virtually when I was first elected, and felt very much for the residents who have great difficulty. And also like to thank Jenny and Gary for the several meetings that we have had in discussing this very vexed problem of how to deal with this situation. We drew in residents, we drew in B&Q, and I'd also like to say that not only is B&Q in that particular area, not only do we have quite a number of residents, but we also have a small industrial estate just along there. So there is a lot of traffic coming and going, and this whole situation needs really to be thought about. It's been mentioned that McDonald's, it's also been mentioned that there is a problem with drivers parking outside McDonald's who are these Uber food delivery people or whatever company they actually work for. I've drawn out a few of my kind of like comments about this situation. I'm also very impressed with the work we've done at Loch Meadow Complex. And obviously this has cost a great deal of money. We're talking about millions, and obviously this is something that we're hoping will become quite a draw and quite a gem within that particular area of Maidstone, which I think it has been referred to think about it as the cultural quarter of Maidstone. When we think of the other buildings that are there, the Loch Meadow complex is very much a part of that. I have actually been advised that by a resident that when there are events or cinemas or the cinema closes, it can take a very long time for people to actually get out of that area. If they're getting out of that area, very often people will go from the cinema to a meal. This is very good for restaurants in Maidstone, especially as we know the difficulties they've had with COVID. But people will not want to come to Maidstone. There's no reason why they should come to Maidstone rather than going somewhere else that they find might be a lot easier and not thinking about, I mean, you only need to go through one gridlock, sitting there for a good half hour, 3/4 of an hour, waiting to get out of the area, to not want to go back again. And I should imagine even Maidstone people probably wouldn't want to go back again unless there's some amazing draw to take them there. So this is something that we have spent a lot of time, effort and money on the complex at Loch Meadow. And we need to make sure that it works well for everybody. We're talking about the residents, 750 accommodation areas. I mean, that is a lot of people. And I actually have spoken to residents as well and heard harrowing tales of people trying to get out of that area, including quite emotive. One nurse who wanted to get up to the hospital during the really bad times of COVID, and preventing those residents who want to get to work to go to work. As Councillor Harper says, this situation can be sporadic, particular times of the day. Some of it you might go by and say, well, there's no traffic here at all. Other times you might go say, God, dear me, I don't want to join that line of traffic. It'll take me hours to get out again. So therefore, I think really I do agree, after discussions with Councillor Harper, I really think that option 3 would be a very good, possibly short-term option. I am loath to think that we draw a line under anything more expensive, but at this particular time, we have to think about COVID. We have to think about how much money has been spent by KCC, how much money has been spent by Maidstone Borough. We have to think about those kind of issues, and anything more grandiose could cost a lot more money. And also it means that people will be waiting, because it can't happen straight away. Anything big cannot happen straight away. So therefore people will be waiting, and they will be saying, nobody gives a toss about what's happening down here with us. The commercial people don't care. The residents, everybody is going to be saying that. So as
we do care. I think we do care, Councillor Rose. So I'm getting that you're supporting an option 3 as well. So
I am indeed, yes.
Thank you. If I can move on and get the other speakers.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nagy. I've got you next on my list.
Thank you, Chairman. I did ask Councillor English to email around what I emailed to the Earl Committee on the 15th of February.
He did.
Can you hear me? I did it. Oh, you got it. All right. Not everyone's got it, but they will have it, because that is the main reason why we're here tonight. Now, I went to that Earl meeting because I was concerned. Obviously, we was going to approve the food halls, or that was one of the committees that had to approve it. And all I said was, I just said that, Maidstone Borough Council should bear in mind that if we're going to start attracting people to Lot Meadow, we should do something with the junction. And Ali, the owner of McDonald's, it's all in that email, apart from the fact he put 50,000 in, a lot of councillors won't know this, to improvements to that junction, which has been mainly spent elsewhere. So he's very frustrated with the abuse he gets about McDonald's being successful on that bit. But Maidstone Borough Council did give it permission and expected some road improvements or junction improvements. Now, that's why I mentioned it that night. Now, I was inundated. I know it's not my ward, but a lot of people because every time that something got built, when Wallace's went and when all the works went, we obviously built more houses and dwellings, or units, whatever they call them these days. And obviously it was always said we must do something with the junction, and never happened. Now, my understanding and the meetings I've been involved in, the people are now calling this the island, because they feel like they're cut off. And as previous speakers have said, the people over there do feel like they are neglected and nothing's getting done about this. And that's why I felt, I just mentioned it at that meeting, I didn't expect the response that I got. Now, from that meeting, where I mentioned that, we have now got, in my view, a fantastic report from KCC, and lots of other councillors have been to meetings the same as me, where my understanding is people, if there's any money left over, let's put it towards the 2 roads in, 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out, rather than waste it on temporary things. Now, this is like, I'll give you another example. When the Terrace Road was shut the weekend, on Facebook, everyone was saying that must be McDonald's, until they realised there was roadworks along they'd shut the Terrace Road. And that's an example of what happens. All of a sudden, 2 or 3 cars cannot turn into McDonald's, and we get gridlock. And that happens. And that is why I brought it to the attention. And I didn't realise there's the passion for this. And I think that I just think that we got to give the people here some hope. And the 2 lanes in, where one would turn to McDonald's and people could drive straight through, no problem, is going to have to happen. And I think it must be put in my lifetime, because if we make Loch Meadow a success, where we're putting lots of money into it, because now we have got the lease and everything, we've got to try and make it be a success. We could have gridlock quite easily. And I'm hoping that this committee will take up as a long term the 2 lanes in, where one goes to McDonald's and the 2 lanes out, because I think this is what the residents want. And I've been stuck in this traffic myself at weekends thinking, why am I sitting here trying to get out of Moat Avenue? And then when you do get to the bridge, you realise everyone's trying to turn left and they can't. Now, we all live in Maidstone. We've probably all got stuck there at some time or in the traffic with this. All I'm suggesting is that we have a long-term plan, because Jenny and her team have done a fantastic drawing, and that is what my understanding is residents would like to see, even if it's 2 years. At least they've got something to look forward to. And if we can do something temporary, fair enough, if the money's there. But I think I'm hoping that tonight we will have something long-term for the people that live in this island, as they call it. And I've always on about the river and how we haven't done nothing.
We know you love your river.
Yes,
okay.
But I just feel I now know the passion for the people that live over there would like to see Maidstone Borough Council improve this junction. And I think Jenny and her team have come up with a fantastic scheme with a McDonald's has a turning right, so people can go past.
Can I just comment on that? That turning right to McDonald's, I think, needs careful consideration. As somebody that sat in the car park at Mackie D's enjoying my fare, I watched somebody turn right and park right outside the chip shop because they weren't going to walk anywhere distance to pick up their chips, and they promptly caused a queue behind them, which, being so close to the gyratory, jammed it up. So I think some careful consideration about a right turn there needs to be had, because sitting watching, that's exactly what happened. So
yeah, the yellow box stopping people from blocking the entrances is fantastic, and I think Jenny has come up with a fantastic plan. I just, you know, I might not be here in a few years, you never know, but I just think the people that who buy places in there are, because we don't have much say in the roads anyway, it's KCC, but at least they know that Maidstone Borough are fighting
I think the
their
will
case.
is there, Councillor Nagy. I think
Thank you very
there's
much.
absolutely the will there to try and
Yeah, the
sort
will's
this out.
got to be there.
Finding the right solution is going to be the challenge there. So if you're happy, I will move on to Councillor English, and then I'll go to the committee members. Thank you, Councillor Nagy. Councillor English.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will try to be brief, as there's been some lengthy presentations. This is an issue that hasn't suddenly appeared since McDonald's was placed in this vicinity, but that has significantly contributed to the increase in traffic. There was some attempt by the planning committee at the time and planning department to address that, which clearly didn't progress at that time to the degree that one would have hoped. And clearly, since Loch Meadow has at least the potential, once we get past these COVID situations, and indeed to some extent has already demonstrated an increase in footfall since the improvements there, that this issue is only going to get significantly greater. So it is clear to me that it does need a long-term solution. I am sceptical about any solution that depends on relying on Network Rail's cooperation. I do not think that it would be realistic to expect that to deliver a solution. Having experience working with them over the years, I actually would caution against putting too much trust in Network Rail to deliver anything on time, or even within the next 25 years. If they tell you it's a year, it'll be 25, if it ever happens. So, but having said that, it does need a long-term solution, which does need to take into account pedestrian and cycling access as well. That's not easy to design, but it does need doing. What I would be reluctant to see is nothing at all happen in the interim, because this is a problem that happens now. Someone once said that the perfect is the enemy of the good. And if we hold out for a perfect solution, which will take certainly some time to design, it could be years before anything happens. I would say that there does need to be some joined up thinking. Something called the town centre strategy has gone to all the borough council committees. It would seem to me that it isn't just housing that one should be planning in terms of a town centre strategy, but it's also the economy. Being able to move around an area and being able to make the most of a Lock Meadow site is integral to Maidstone's economy. It's integral to how we deal with the town centre. I would have thought that with a bit of cooperation between the two local authorities, as that strategy is developed, opportunities could be taken to further deal with these issues. And in due course, we might be able to do something about overcoming the significant funding gap. But in the meantime, and to facilitate that happening, design work needs to be done, because in my experience, if you've got planning applications or whatever coming for, or funding of whatever stream coming forward, you have to have a long-term scheme on the papers, or the funding through whatever won't happen. Rob Jarman has told me time and time again over the years that we haven't done this or that because we haven't had a scheme. So if we do design a scheme, then I believe funding opportunities might, I say might, be able to be accessed. If we don't have a scheme designed, and Jenny has done some fantastic work on bringing forward some options that we can refine. If we don't have those schemes, then we can't do anything at all. So that's a little longer than I'd like, but I do think that we have an opportunity here, but there is, you know, this isn't the final stage. We need to do some work on the long-term solutions and what might work in an interim stage while we're working up the design. So
thank you, Councillor English. I think
stage in the process, Madam Chairman.
I think I agree with you. What I'm hearing is we all want something to happen, but actually rushing into it is not necessarily the answer. What we want is a permanent scheme that will work. So I think I've got Councillor Cumming next to speak, and then Councillors Webb, Councillors Cox and Councillor Cook in that order. So if I could ask you to make your points fairly briefly, and then we'll see where we can go with this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In the report, it says the McDonald's traffic sometimes or at times causes a backup into Broadway. Now, if Barker Road and Hart Street were both one way, this McDonald's traffic will block the exit from the housing development to the southwest of the market and the industrial estate and the market and Lock Meadow estate itself. Barker Road, it's stated, is the only entry and exit from this area. So if one way is needed, then clockwise would be better to avoid conflicting traffic at the Hart Street and Barker Road junction. Now, therefore, options 6 or 7 with the extra lanes would be preferable. But going on to Appendix B of the diagrams, the average daily traffic flows shows over 300 more vehicle movements into the Lock Meadow complex area than leaving. So in the over a week, where do these extra 2,000 cars end up? Okay, thanks.
In the river probably, but I won't go there. Sorry, Councillor Cumming, that's really made me laugh. That's a very good point, and actually I think you make a very valid point about the clock, the one-way system possibly holding up traffic coming out the flats, which comes back to why we mustn't rush into a solution without very carefully considering everything there. Thank you, Councillor Cumming. Councillor Webb next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I completely agree with your last statement. The only point I want to make is that we do hope that Councillor Nagy stays on for just a little bit longer. We wouldn't want him to go quite that quickly, would we? And just to say, Jenny, you've done a fantastic job. You always do, and thank you. My only point is that this is Section 106 agreement money. We must spend it before it expires, and we must spend it in a way that has impact for residents, but also for the economy of Maidstone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Very valid points there. Councillor Cox, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Listening to everybody's input, and particularly the ward members there, looking through the options, initially I was in total agreement with the ward members about option 3, but then look and see that it would mean that there's a one-way system, which I believe would then cause everybody to go down Hart Street to be able to get out, and it's a lot narrower than it really looks on the map here. And I don't think that amount of traffic going, actually putting everything past McDonald's, that traffic that is coming out is going to improve it. Therefore, I actually think that option 1 would allow people coming out both from the industrial site, which can't gain access directly onto Hart Street, note, that it could come to the roundabout, by Hart Street, the Hart Street roundabout, and then go on its way as normal, which would then contain the traffic that is caused by McDonald's to stay in Hart Street. So if people see that there's a lot of stationary traffic because it's a high point during their day and their serving times, and then it's backing up through Hart Street, people can turn right and go down Barker Road, which would continue the residents and visitors to Loch Meadow to be able to get in and out as normal. If we look at option 1, it maintains an exit from McDonald's via Hart Street and also allows potential parking and loading for those people who are going to the other facilities there, the kebab shop and the fish and chip shop, and also, very importantly, B&Q, because B&Q do have the deliveries, and I too was lobbied then. That's why I declared, as I've been in there as a customer, and the managers approached me there to talk. And I think he sees the merit of having a one-way system as long as his lorry can pull over and indeed turn. Option 1 would mean they wouldn't need to turn because the lorry's back would be right by their gate, I believe. So although one of these options that is just signage primarily is where I think we should head initially, I don't know whether option 3, although I thought so initially, is the way, because that's moving all the traffic, including the traffic coming in and therefore out. When prisoners leave the court, they would have to go through the narrower roads along Hart Street and out that way. So I do think we need to look more carefully. So actually, I'm not being able to side with the members. I think option 1 is primarily the best one because it allows the option to carry on the two-way Barker Road to be able to get off if they see there is a blockage around McDonald's, which is the reason why we're really talking about this. Thank you.
Councillor Cox, that's an incredibly valid point, which I must admit hadn't occurred to me previously. I think, could I just very quickly, before I come to Councillor Cook, could I ask Jenny, I know there is the option to bring in a temporary traffic order for 18 months, which is it's at least trying, it would trial one of the options to prove whether it works or it doesn't. Could that option 1 be that 18 months trial?
Yes, we would need to have an experimental order to make that, because it's making Hart Street one way and there are no entry signs there. I don't know, and I can't take any credit for these designs, by the way. This is all Gary's. We worked together, but he did the designs and came up with all the pros and cons, and he's been a brilliant support for me on this. So I don't know whether you want to add anything, Gary, at this point.
I mean, certainly, yes. The one-way system could be put in as an experiment. As was mentioned on one of the earlier items, it's for a minimum of 6 months, maximum of 18 months. And we have the option, if it's successful, to make it permanent without having to re-advertise the order. So it would be possible to do it. The only obvious issue is it does cost some money. And we've got a limited budget available to spend on the site as in as a total. So that would come out of any monies that are available for design of a longer term scheme, whether it be through the station or whether it be the main junction. But it certainly could be done.
Madam Chairman, may I just come back on that point?
Yes, you certainly may.
If we've gleaned that a lot of this has come as a result of the increased amount of traffic going through for takeaway, is there not an option to be able to look at, as it's either a potential short fix, that we look at any money that's given to us by COVID for the getting out of the COVID situation or COVID recovery? Because if this is a short-term thing for 6 months or 18, then is it not something that we could fund from that fund, because it may only be short-term? But could I just also, I didn't realise Gary was the creator here. I was seeing the glint in Jenny's eye. But am I right about the traffic not being able to come out of the court in the usual fashion? And I wonder if they would object because it's slowing their vehicles' exit from the courts.
Yes, with option 3, definitely they would have, if they came out of the court, they'd have to go down past the cinema and then up Hart Street past McDonald's. Whereas obviously option 1 or option 2, they'd be able to come out in their usual way there, whether that be the prisoners, the staff, the visitors, the witnesses, whatever, they can all come out that way. I think from my perspective, the drawbacks with option 3 is because it's a complete one-way system. If there's a problem anywhere within that one-way system, you could potentially lock up the whole of the estate. So you get a big problem with the road surface in part of Hart Street, for example. No one can get out. So having an alternative way in option 1 or 2, I think has, from an operational point of view, an advantage over the option 3. Option 3, when everything's working well, potentially could be better, but it doesn't really give us that sort of resilience if there is a problem somewhere. Only got to get a broken down lorry or car or something on the one-way system at a narrow point, and everything becomes a real problem then. So I would probably suggest to the members here that if they wanted to go with an experimental option, that 1 or 2 would be the safer choice, shall we say.
Thank you, Gary. I'm just looking at the 2 options. The difference appears to be option 1 has a yellow box at the junction of Hart Street and Barker Road, and option 2 just puts the give way, gives the priority from traffic coming out of Hart Street. That's right, yeah. So I'm not sure which of those 2 you would consider might be the better one to trial if we were going to trial one.
I would probably suggest 1 would be the better of the 2.
Okay, because we could easily flip it to 2 at some stage if necessary, potentially.
It would be quite easy to swap, yes.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Very good points there, Councillor Cox. Councillor Cook, and then I have Councillor Cannon at the moment. So Councillor Cook, please.
Have you got me down, Madam Chairman, in your list?
Oh, hang on.
Councillor
Who's that
Burton?
speaking? Councillor Burton. Last time I looked, there wasn't anything there, but I will put you in the list, Councillor Burton.
I think I was after Councillor Cummings in the list on the.
Oh, were you? I do
instant
apologise.
messaging.
That means we both missed you here, so I do apologise. You're on the list now. Councillor Cook first.
Can I not
please.
jump in now?
Well, I'll have to ask permission of Councillors Cook and Cannon. Would you be happy for Councillor Burton to jump in, because he's saying with an honest face that he was in the queue?
I'd be happy to hear from the leader.
I've already spoken. I've taken my hand down.
No, it's Councillor Cannon was the other one. Tom Cannon.
Sorry, I thought you said coming.
No. Tom, are you happy to let David go first?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. Okay, David, fire away, and then I'll come back to Councillors Cook and Cannon.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm going to try and be really to the point. I don't think I've ever heard a meeting with so much peacocking going on in one evening, but let's avoid that and cut to the chase. I think we need to get a proposal on the table. So I think there's an essential element that we actually do something in the short term to attempt to make an improvement. Therefore, I am moving that we actually instruct option 1 to be
Seconded.
conducted on a trial basis. Okay. I also would like to add to that proposal that site is kept of 3.14 in the report, which to my mind, is the bigger solution. I don't share Councillor English's utter pessimism of dealing with Network Rail, but I think that second vehicular access, to solve a problem this big, you need to find a big solution. And that, to me, I think needs to be kept on the table. I think that should be moved forward as part of the town centre strategy development. And if there is the need for further funding to draw up schemes, that could also be undertaken under the mantle of the town centre strategy. So let's use some or whatever amount of money is necessary for what we've got on the table now to actually attempt to do something. Option one, with further work on 3.14 through the town centre management strategy. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. And Councillor Cox has seconded. Councillor Cox, do you wish to speak now or forever hold your peace?
I'm not forever holding my peace, but I'm happy for just seconding.
Thank you very much. So I'll come on the basis we have a recommendation on the table. Councillor Cook first, and then Councillor Cannon, and then I would like to move on to take a vote. So Councillor Cook, please.
Well, I was going to be pragmatic, short, and basically do exactly what Councillor Burton's just done. So I have nothing to add at this stage now.
He's pipped you to the post, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, Councillor Cook. Councillor Cannon, please.
I'm now wondering whether I should have let Councillor Burton go ahead. But
he's pipped you to the post. Oh dear. Okay.
But no. So I mean, the part of my issue, I've been on the working group for quite a number of them, and at no point have I heard any businesses that have been on that working group be supportive of any of the one-way solutions. And so, looking at option one, I do have doubts. So I like the fact that we want to put. I preferred the recommendation in the report to just go forward with the long-term solutions, because this really is a huge issue for Maidstone. When that traffic backs up onto the main one-way system because there's not enough lanes going in, the whole system can be affected at certain times of day. And I think I've also not heard any residents. I mean, when I've spoken to residents down there, be particularly supportive of one way either. I can see option one has got that. I mean, if Gary could clarify. I mean, I don't think B&Q support that option at all, but perhaps that's changed since the last working group. So I just want to raise. I understand that we want to get something done, but I don't want to be in the situation where we just, in the name of getting something done, we do completely the wrong thing, and then it's sort of, oh, we've got to rip all that up again, and we should have just stuck with pushing for the longer term solution, which is the sensible thing. I appreciate money is the big issue, so I think that's one bit that I want to say. And I do just want to very, very quickly reiterate thank you to the officers, Jenny and Gary, for looking into this, because I know you may have felt that you've opened a can of worms, but actually it's really important on your that you have looked into this, because I think it's such an important issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cannon. I mean, I think what I think we understand what you're saying, and we all agree. The problem with waiting for a long-term solution is nothing will happen for quite a long while. So I don't know if Gary wanted to come back at all about whether B&Q had a specific reason for not liking option one. My personal view is, I think we all want a long-term solution, and we're happy to wait for that. But in the meantime, if we did do a temporary traffic order, which I think was a minimum 6 months, maximum 18, it would answer the question, would option one work or not? And then we go back and do the surveys amongst the residents and the businesses and go, well, now we've tried it. Have you changed your mind, or do you think it's so? I do think we need to do that.
Val,
So
can I just add something to that, please? Because
yes,
having not spoken earlier, maybe you'll just.
Go on then.
Because I wanted to deal with this question. If we're doing something on an experimental basis, which actually will help inform, I think, a longer term solution, and I share your views on that. But I was going to suggest that we do what Councillor Burton was proposing, but we put that on a 12-month pilot basis. If he would be happy to do that, that allows us to then look at that, and if there are problems, we're not committed to leaving it there. We can take it out. If it is working well, then we can continue with the programme while still working on a more comprehensive solution further down the road. The problem we have at the moment, and why I think this is the right way to go, is there isn't the funding there to do anything else. And in the absence of the funding, and if we just limit ourselves to a longer term solution, I fear nothing will happen.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Could I just quickly come back to Jenny Watson then? This temporary traffic order, is that different to having a 12-month pilot, or is it what we're saying is a temporary traffic order would be for 12 months, but we could lift it at any time? Is that an option?
Yeah, it's an experimental order, and I believe, I've never done one before, but I believe they last for 18 months, but we can take them out at any time if it's not working.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So would that possibly be a slightly better option, that if it absolutely causes chaos and a huge amount of upset, we can lift it?
I'm happy with that.
Okay, so on that basis, if I come back to Councillor Burton, would you be prepared to change your proposal slightly, that we go for option 1 on an experimental order?
No, my understanding option 1 is an experimental order.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the
is
same
my
thing.
proposal. That is
Okay.
precisely that. Let's get on and do something. It might help, it might not. If it doesn't, it's not irreversible. Meanwhile, we're looking at bigger solutions in the context of the town centre management strategy, town centre strategy.
Yes.
But let's try and do something for these residents and stop talking about it. I've sat in on a number of these meetings that have happened in the background, and they've been circular at times. Let's do something.
I think we're coming to a conclusion now. I think we're all on the same page. We absolutely want the right long-term solution, but if we at least try option 1 on that basis, it will rule it in or rule it out.
Yeah.
So if everyone's happy, I'd like to go to the vote.
Chairman, can I just ask one question?
Very quickly, Councillor Nagy.
£50,000 from 106 that got spent elsewhere, is there any chance that can come back onto this junction? Or is it once they've spent it, we can't get it back? Because I've never heard of Section 106 money coming back if it's spelt somewhere else. And we have the experienced people here tonight. So Eve, I would just like to know if there's any chance, because obviously it was supposed to be on that junction and it wasn't. Is that gone or forever?
Look at paragraph 3.3 in the report.
And what's that say? So I'm not on the
committee.
committee.
In front of you, haven't you?
No, I'm not on the committee. And
it says that this money left. There's 40-odd thousand quid, I think, left for it. I'd just like to say, sorry, I welcome
40,000. I thought there was only a couple of thousand.
No.
Anyway,
32,000 is remaining.
32,000. Whoa, where did that come from?
Yes. So I think if I can park that for the moment, I think we would need.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I'd like to thank everybody on the committee for where you're coming to. I mean, I know we said option 3, but option 1 hopefully will achieve what we were after. So it'd be great if the committee can push it through. Thank you very much. Lovely.
So can I ask, on the proposal on the table is that option 1 is introduced on an experimental trial basis. That the site is that we keep sight on paragraph 3.14 going forward. Is that the wording you wanted, Councillor Burton?
Yes, please. In the context of the town centre strategy development, so that we're not limited to only that option. I mean, the town centre strategy would consider that and any other options.
Oh. If I ask Olivia just to read out the wording she's got, and then you to make sure you're happy with it, and then we'll go to the vote. So Olivia, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor Burton, could you just repeat that last part of the context of the town centre strategy, please?
Shall I do it by saying that the board recommends progressing option 1 And then the next part of the recommendation is, and the board recommends further consideration of options contained in 3.14 as part of Maidstone's town centre strategy work, and other solutions also as part of the town centre strategy work. Not the best English there, but you know what
Solutions
I'm
or
saying.
financial options, investigate further financial
So
options.
3.14, so what I'm saying is that the town centre strategy work shall not be limited to only considering 3.14. Keeps everything on the table.
At town centre strategy and other options, I think was. Olivia is typing away. Give me one moment, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Burton, we're just trying to get the wording as you want it.
Pressed the wrong one.
There's some very fast typing going on at this end. So bear with us, I think we're very nearly there. At the moment, could I just ask out of interest, is anybody violently opposed to the approximate wording that we have on this proposal?
No, and I'm happy to second the amendments.
Superb, Councillor Cox, that is noted.
Can I just ask Jenny, what's the likely time period to get this in if it goes, well, if we're only making a recommendation, we aren't passing anything official, but how long do you think it might take to get this in place?
This year?
Oh, definitely this year. I would say
Now,
within probably the next, what do you think, Gary, 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months should be sufficient for that. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's not particularly complicated.
No.
Especially if we're using sort of temporary materials and so forth to as part of the trial, so that we can have the opportunity to tweak it if we need to. So so things like the build outs and stuff, if we've got any of those, we'd probably do those with planters to start off with until we're happy with the layout, and then we
got
can.
some from King Street you could have used.
we have a few planters available, so that's not a problem. So
sounds like it could be 3 to 5 then.
Possibly, but we've got to get the order in, order sorted and so forth. But that might be the time-consuming bit.
I'd probably say 6 months at the most, but don't quote me on that. Yeah.
It would be nice to see something happen in the relatively short term, because at least it will rule this option in or rule it out one way or the other. So I think it's a very valid way forward. We're very nearly there, Councillor Burton. Just bear with us. I thank you all very much for your patience.
I think once we know it's in, we'll soon find out if the residents like it or not.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the best way. We're nearly there.
Did you want me to just respond on the issue of the B&Q deliveries?
Oh yes, please, Gary, if you could.
B&Q generally, the way they describe their deliveries being done, they have lorries that are loaded from both sides. So what will happen is the lorry will come up the one-way section of Hart Street alongside B&Q and then stop at the rear, so they can offload the right-hand side of the vehicle. The vehicle would then leave, go round the gyratory and come back in and come in Hart Street the other way round, so they can offload the other side. And then they turn around outside McDonald's and then leave the way they came in. So that's how they're operating at the moment, and obviously making Hart Street one way will stop them from doing that. Having said that, we understand that there was a planning condition when the store was originally given its planning permission that loading was done within its rear yard, which is currently full of materials and so forth. So
they aren't currently complying with their planning condition, but because it hasn't been causing a problem, I don't think anyone's decided to take any action on that. So they do have the option to load from within their yard. It just means they have to manage their deliveries and materials better.
They have a massive car park.
Perhaps the owner could tell them to do it properly then. Oh, that's KCC.
Okay, I think Olivia's going to read out the recommendations. Councillor Burton, if you can just say if you're happy with the wording, then we'll go to the vote. So Olivia, please.
Thank you for your patience, members. So at the moment, I've got that the board recommend that option 1, the officers be instructed to implement option 1 on a trial basis, and that the board recommends further consideration of the options contained in point 3.14 of the report as part of the Maidstone Town Centre strategy work without prejudice to any other town centre strategy work. Does that encompass the motion?
That's spot on. There was a third element that we did touch on, and that if larger schemes are identified, design work also be undertaken as part of the town centre management. So that just nails it down that if we had a situation where we had no money to do design work, we could do it perhaps out of town centre strategy money.
Get a design going,
yeah, design work, so that because the point was made that when funding opportunities do come along, unless you've got something that's a bit shovel ready, so it just put that hook in there for Maidstone to consider that if
agreed.
Yeah, we've got that wording now. Would members like me to read that wording out, or are we all happy to go to the vote on where we are?
Go to the vote, Val.
Super. Right. Is there anyone against this motion? Is there anybody who wishes to abstain from this motion?
I wish to abstain on the motion.
Is that Councillor Cannon?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's noted. So can I hear, is everybody else in agreement and for the recommendation as stated?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So I have all in favour apart from Councillor Cannon, who is abstaining. Members, thank you very much. I think we might have achieved something there. That is superb. Be nice if we did, wouldn't it? Be absolutely superb. That concludes item 14. So I think we just have the report, which was now the Maidstone Highway Works Programme, which is from Susan Laporte. And I just have to ask if anybody has any comments on the Highways Works Programme. That's a lovely silence. So on that basis, I think I can say thank you very much.
Sorry, Val, I hadn't pressed my...
Councillor Hinder, sorry. Councillor Hinder, far away.
Right, it's hopefully a quick one. Under drainage repairs, Hart Farm Road, existing soakaway and maintainable. It says entered into forward work programme, permanent road liable to flooding signs have been installed in the interim. They have not. There are no signs there. There were temporary ones when there were holes there, but this is a major problem for anyone who traverses from Walderslade in that direction towards Maidstone and coming the other way. We, that's myself, the board members and the parish council, would dearly like to see this progressed as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Hinder. Susan Laporte, are you there and do you know what Councillor Hinder is talking about? Because I can't find it in my report at the moment.
Yeah, I do know about Hart Farm Road. I know we're having problems getting access to the soakaway in the adjacent field to put some more drainage in and to CCTV the line. I was assured that signs were up, so I'll take that back immediately tomorrow to the drainage board and make sure that they're put permanently in there. Can't understand where they've gone, so I know they were out initially. I'll take it up with the drainage team and report back to you, Bob. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Susan. So if nobody else has any comments, I will say thank you all very, very much for your patience this evening. I think we've had a good meeting at last, and I will close the meeting and bid you all a good rest of the evening. Good night.
Good night,
everyone. Thank you.
Right.